Welcome back, everyone. My name is Meg Kruger. I'm the content specialist with Pioneer Athletics. And today we are joined by Jared Mason. He's a recent graduate of the Virginia Tech Turf program, and he's going to help us out with one of our campaigns that we're going to be launching here soon called Inspiring the Next Generation. So who better to speak on it than someone who's going to be a bright bulb of the next generation here in the turf industry. So Jared, I'll let you take it away, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm Jared Mason. I'm 22. I just graduated from Virginia Tech, like Meg mentioned. I'm from Suffolk, Virginia, so kind of the Virginia Beach area. I started working, I guess, in golf or turf, more specifically, around 16. It was just kind of a summer job. My neighbor was a superintendent, and he followed my dad into the neighborhood and was like, "When does Jared turn 16?" And my dad was like, "Why?" And then he's like, "Well, I want him to come to work for me." He's like, "Oh, okay." So I just did it because I didn't have to look for a job. And then I realized there was a lot more to it, and then just kind of went with it from there.
That's awesome. So somebody kind of sought you out and piqued your interest for this to kind of spiral into, now a career that you're going to have.
Absolutely.
And so that first gig was just like a summer job on a golf course?
Yep. Mowing greens, breaking bunkers, just everyday stuff.
I love
The
that.
grind.
And then what did that process really look like, explaining it to your parents? It's not necessarily a conventional like 5-year plan down the road for maybe some parents to understand. What did that really look like for you to tell them, I want to pursue this as a degree and then as a career?
Right. I was actually very fortunate. Coming out of high school, I, excuse me, I enrolled in community college, just general ed classes. I wanted to transfer and do engineering, but I realized that probably wasn't for me. It feels like a lot of inside. I'm more of an outside kind of person. Um, so, like I mentioned, I noticed there was more to the turf management industry, and I kind of followed in or went in and transferred. I'm sorry, I went in and switched my major, but it was kind of a funny story when I went in to go do that because I didn't know where I guess the counselor's office or whoever I needed to speak to was. So I asked the lady at the front desk, and she's like, "Well, what do you need?" And I told her I was changing my major, and she's like, "What are you changing it from?" And I told her general studies to this horticulture kind of thing. And she was like, "Well, if you do engineering, you can get somebody to mow your grass, right?" And I was just like, "Can you just tell me where the office is?" I was just dumbfounded that somebody would say that.
That is such, that's something we hear time and time again, whether it's them, referencing groundskeeper as like a glorified grass mower, or not understanding like that it's not kitty litter on the baseball field. It's,
Yeah.
An actual, like an engineered product. There's so many misconceptions about it. And I think, you know, I was just talking to my brother who's about to enter college, and he's someone that loves sports, loves being outside. And like yourself, he's going to enter as a general studies. And when I told him, I've been working with groundskeepers for the past 2 years, so I have a ton of knowledge about it. When I told him he should consider it, the first thing he said, "I don't want to mow grass. I don't." And it was like, after all the conversations I've had and really relate it back to my family, you still have these misconceptions that are so difficult to break. And how have you really kind of navigated that, whether it's talking to aunts and uncles or, talking to friends, or, really being a student at a university and maybe other people not understanding what your program is?
Um, I guess the best way is just to kind of know what you're doing is real science and has merit behind it. What other people think isn't that important. The finished product speaks for itself. Um, and if they're really enamored by what you've done, they might ask you like, "How did you do that?" And then they might have more of an appreciation for the process, and you can kind of explain what goes into it. But it's very hard because I mean, like I've got family members like, "Yeah, glorified lawn boy," and it's like, well, yeah, that's fine, but what do you do?
Yeah, what are you bringing to the table, buddy?
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about career exploration while enrolled in school. How important was it for you to take internships or really look at the different opportunities that might be available after graduation?
That was honestly probably more important or just as important than the educational portion of it, because yeah, the education is good and all, but a lot of it you learn hands on. That's that's just how it is. And then earning your stripes, as it were, putting in that time, that's that's another one of the big factors.
Definitely. And what kind of internships were you able to kind of experience throughout your education?
So right after I graduated high school, I went on the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America, their job board, and I found an internship in Cincinnati, Ohio, at a place called Coldstream Country Club. John Williams, the superintendent there, was uh, he was awesome. He let me work there for the summer, and we got to rebuild a new putting green, expanded tee, just all kinds of stuff. It's not just the mowing the grass, the applying fertilizers, pesticides, things like that.
And I have so many follow-up questions to that because that's such a good point. It's like, even though you were right out of high school, to let these other kids that might be thinking about pursuing a degree or even entering right the field, just go on a job board and, see what it's available. Because I do think like a lot of the summer work and seasonal jobs would be available to high schoolers. And that was the case in your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the worst they can say is no or not reply. So even if you don't meet the qualifications exactly as it's written on the thing, the worst they can do is say no.
Yeah, and that's across the board. I'm somebody that always would apply for a job, even if it's like I only qualified for two of the bullet points or something, because you never know. And especially, being on the other end, it's like those are all the extra, golden nuggets if somebody meets all those things. But a lot of it's like
Right.
getting that person through the door, and if they're trainable, and if they're willing to come up and show up to work and um, teach them. So that's something really for the next generation and younger kids to really realize is just put yourself out there.
Absolutely.
Another follow-up question, were you always, planning on sticking on the golf side, or did you really, make sure that your internships and career exploration was golf, or how did you really decide on golf?
So most of what I've done has been golf. I actually never played golf until I started working on a golf course. I thought it was the dumbest sport ever. I was like, that's for old men. I'm not doing that. And then I found out it was actually pretty fun. Um, so I've kind of stuck in golf mainly because you get free golf out of it. It's hard work, but you get the free golf. Um, but outside of that, I mean, there's so many other options and ways you can go with it, even if it's not in athletics or even in turf. I mean, the plant stuff is it's very general. So I mean, while it would take a little bit of uh, I guess catching up, you could still shift lanes and go into ornamental flowers, whatever you wanted to do.
I run across that so many times with people that I meet in the industry. It's like they might have started in baseball, realized that it wasn't for them, then they went over to golf, and maybe then they went to the research side and now they're selling, maybe they're
Yep.
selling equipment. It's so many different opportunities that I don't think are as obvious to someone that, is just looking at the base level of this.
Yeah, it's definitely once you get inside the industry, you see a lot more, but from the outside, like we said earlier, it's just mowing grass from the
Yeah,
outside. But that's
definitely.
probably only 5-10% of what actually is involved in our job. So
Yeah. And so another question I had, do you think when entering the field, do you have to be willing to kind of relocate in if you're gonna want to be placed in an internship or in a program after school? Because I know that is something that I've seen a lot. It's you guys are kind of all over the country when you're first starting out. What's that been like in your experience?
Um, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to be willing to relocate. You can find good opportunities anywhere. You just they might not be at the top level recognizable names, but that's not really that important. What's important is what you learn, and sometimes what you learn not to do from some of the people you work for. You learn from their mistakes.
And so I guess a follow-up question, when you were looking for jobs, what were the things that enticed you to kind of move across? Like, you mentioned you went to Cincinnati, you're now going to be in Maryland. What are the factors that kind of motivated you to, pick up and move?
Well, I guess right out of high school, it wasn't necessarily I wanted the job experience. I just kind of wanted to get away from home, but it worked out that I got to do both, and it was very beneficial.
My next question I'm going to ask you is, what kind of mentors or resources did you really seek out, when you were training for a gig or throughout your education program?
Former bosses, whether it was superintendents or assistants I've worked with, I definitely keep in contact with all those people. That connections are very big in the industry. The phrase "who you know, it's not what you know" is very applicable here. Well, it's applicable everywhere, but especially here.
And so, what is something that you would want to say to whether it's a high school student or somebody that is transferring or looking to make a career switch or degree switch? What would you say to them, if they're wanting to pursue turf?
I guess a couple of things. Probably the first one is it's not going to be easy. If you're looking for easy, this is not where you want to go. Um, but it's very fun and rewarding. If you're willing to put in the time and those kind of things, it's definitely very rewarding. And excuse me. The other thing I would like to say to someone pursuing a career in turf is just kind of follow whatever you think is right. Uh, the people calling you glorified lawn boy or whatever it is, they're going to be looking at whatever it is that you end up doing and being like, "Wow, I had no idea." And that's, I mean, this may sound bad, but to have somebody humbled like that is kind of a nice feeling.
In return, just by going out and not letting those misconceptions really affect you or how you're gonna manage your career, it's you become an advocate for the turf industry as well, as someone who enters the turf program or the education program, then graduates and then is placed in a job field and goes on to affect other people down the road. You become an advocate yourself, so that's really important as well.
Absolutely. Turning around and helping the person behind you is something that my mentors have helped me with, and I hope to help the next generation with as well.
Of course. Well, this has been great. Is there anything else that I didn't touch on that you would want to be included, or anything that I didn't cover?
I don't believe so. I think we covered everything.
Perfect. Well, again, I really appreciate you hopping on. I know you are trying to move and start a new job, so I'm glad I was able to catch you today.
Absolutely. I'm glad I was able to help.